The book of Exodus tells a story of liberation, a people freed from the shackles of slavery in Egypt. Led by Moses, they journeyed through the wilderness, a vast and unforgiving landscape. Their destination, Mount Sinai, a place already revered in ancient tradition. This mountain, rising majestically from the desert floor, was to be the setting for a momentous encounter between God and his chosen people. It was here, amidst the rugged beauty of Sinai, that the Israelites would receive the divine laws that would shape their destiny. Their journey had been arduous, a test of faith and resilience. They had faced hunger, thirst, and the pursuit of their former captors. Yet, through it all, they had witnessed the awesome power of God. The parting of the Red Sea, the manna from heaven, the water gushing from the rock, each miracle a testament to God's unwavering presence. Now, as they camped at the foot of Mount Sinai, a sense of anticipation, a mixture of awe and trepidation, rippled through the camp. The Israelites were a people on the cusp of transformation, poised to transition from a fleeing horde to a nation bound by covenant, to a God who had promised them freedom and a land of their own. They were about to enter into a sacred agreement, a pact that would define their relationship with the divine and lay the foundation for their laws, their beliefs, and their very identity. The stage was set at Mount Sinai, and the drama of revelation was about to unfold. The arrival at Mount Sinai marked a pivotal moment in the Israelites' journey. It was more than just a stop on their route. It was a divinely appointed rendezvous. God had summoned Moses to the mountaintop, the place where heaven and earth seemed to converge. It was a place of raw power, a place where the veil between the physical and the spiritual felt thin. The Israelites watched as Moses ascended, disappearing into the cloud that often enveloped the mountain's peak. Their hearts pounded with a mixture of fear and expectation. They knew that Moses was their intermediary, their link to the God who had brought them out of Egypt. They had witnessed the plagues, the miracles, the undeniable signs of God's power. Now they waited, poised between the familiar past and the uncertain future, for Moses to descend and reveal the words that would forever alter their course. The air crackled with anticipation. God, who had revealed himself through mighty acts, was about to make himself known through words, through commandments that would serve as the bedrock of their new society. The covenant, a solemn agreement between God and his people, was about to be forged, forever linking the Israelites to the God who had chosen them, liberated them, and now prepared to instruct them in the ways of righteousness. Mount Sinai, a place of stark beauty and awe-inspiring grandeur, was transformed into a theater of divine revelation. It was here that God chose to reveal himself to his people in a manner more profound and enduring than ever before. Sinai, etched into the collective memory of the Israelites, would forever be associated with the giving of the law, the establishment of a covenant relationship, and the birth pangs of a nation. The very landscape, rugged and unforgiving, served as a backdrop for the gravity of the events about to unfold. The desolate beauty of the desert mirrored the Israelites' own state stripped bare, humbled, and dependent on God's provision. It was in this wilderness, far from the comforts of Egypt, that they were to be molded into the people God intended them to be. The significance of Sinai extended far beyond its geographical location. It became a symbol, a touchstone of faith for generations to come. It represented the awesome presence of God, the binding nature of covenant, and the transformative power of divine law. The events at Sinai would be recounted, celebrated, and contemplated for centuries, shaping the religious consciousness of the Jewish people, and influencing the development of legal and ethical codes throughout the world. As Moses ascended Mount Sinai, leaving the Israelites to wait and contemplate the divine encounter about to take place, a palpable sense of anticipation and awe settled over the camp. They were about to receive the law, the divine blueprint for their lives as individuals and as a nation. The weight of this moment, the gravity of standing on the precipice of revelation, filled them with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The air crackled with a nervous energy. The Israelites, accustomed to the predictable rhythms of slavery, were now confronted with the awesome mystery of the divine. The laws they knew would define the very fabric of their society, shaping their relationships with God and with one another. They understood that this was a defining moment in their history, a time when their faith would be tested and their obedience required. The days stretched into nights as the people waited for Moses to return, their hearts filled with a blend of hope and uncertainty. The anticipation was palpable. The silence, broken only by the crackling of campfires and the murmur of prayers, heightened the sense of awe and expectation. The very air seemed charged with divine energy as the Israelites prepared themselves, both physically and spiritually, for the revelation that was to come. High atop Mount Sinai, Moses stood enveloped in the ethereal mist, the voice of God echoing through the silence. The Lord spoke of the Israelites' miraculous rescue from Egypt, a testament to his unwavering power. Carried on eagle's wings, they had been brought to this very spot, a desolate wilderness chosen as the stage for a profound covenant, a pact that would forever bind them to their God. He promised to make them his treasured possession, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation set apart from all others. The weight of these words settled upon Moses, his heart thrumming with the gravity of his mission. He descended the mountain, his mind ablaze with the divine decree, eager to relay God's message to the expectant Israelites. The elders of the community, their faces etched with years of hardship and hope, gathered around him. As Moses recounted the Lord's words, a hush fell over the assembly, their anticipation mingling with the fragrant smoke of incense rising from a nearby altar. With a unified voice, the Israelites declared their unwavering obedience to the Lord's covenant. "We will do everything the Lord has said." They proclaimed their words echoing through the encampment, a testament to their faith and their eagerness to embrace their chosen destiny. Their response, a chorus of commitment reverberating through the desert air, reached Moses' ears, and a surge of hope coursed through him. He had witnessed their resilience, their unwavering faith during their arduous journey. Now, united in purpose, they stood ready to embrace the divine laws that would shape their lives and forge their identity as a people set apart. The divine call had been issued, the covenant accepted, but before the Israelites could receive the law, they were required to prepare themselves, to purify their hearts and bodies for this momentous encounter with the divine. God instructed Moses to consecrate the people, to guide them through rituals of cleansing that would symbolize their inward transformation. For 2 days the Israelites were to dedicate themselves to spiritual preparation. They were to wash their clothes, a tangible act representing the casting off of impurities, a symbolic cleansing in anticipation of the divine presence. The air buzzed with a sense of sacred purpose as the Israelites diligently followed the Lord's instructions. Moses, his voice imbued with the authority vested in him by God, emphasized the importance of abstaining from sexual relations, a physical act of restraint reflecting a deeper spiritual discipline. By separating themselves from the ordinary aspects of life, they sought to elevate their thoughts and actions, aligning themselves with the divine will. The camp, usually bustling with the activities of daily life, took on an atmosphere of quiet anticipation. The air, thick with the smell of burning incense, seemed to hum with unspoken expectations. The Israelites, humbled by the Lord's power and inspired by his promise, immersed themselves in prayer and reflection, preparing their hearts to receive the divine word. Their anticipation was not merely for a set of laws but for a transformed life, a life lived in covenant with the God who had freed them from bondage. The dawn of the third day broke over the desert landscape, but this was no ordinary sunrise. As the first rays kissed the peak of Mount Sinai, a profound transformation gripped the mountain, a visible manifestation of the awe-inspiring power that resided there. The mountain, once a silent sentinel against the vast desert sky, now trembled violently, its rocky slopes seemingly convulsing under the weight of the divine presence. Thick clouds, dark and heavy with the promise of something extraordinary, descended upon the summit, shrouding it in an ominous veil. Lightning flashed, bolts of celestial fire splitting the sky, illuminating the swirling clouds with an eerie glow. The very air crackled with an electric tension as if the heavens themselves were about to unleash an unimaginable power. Then a sound, unlike anything the Israelites had ever heard, ripped through the stillness of the desert morning. The blast of a trumpet echoing across the barren landscape resonated deep within their chests, its raw power both terrifying and exhilarating. It was a sound that spoke of both judgment and mercy, of power beyond human comprehension. Fear, primal and instinctive, gripped the hearts of even the bravest Israelites. They huddled together, their faces pale, their bodies trembling as the very earth seemed to shake beneath their feet. They knew, with a certainty that transcended mere belief, that they were in the presence of something truly awesome, something that would forever alter the course of their lives. The Israelites, their senses overwhelmed by the awe-inspiring display of divine power, watched as Moses, a solitary figure silhouetted against the fiery backdrop of Mount Sinai, ascended once more. The Lord, addressing Moses from the heart of the swirling cloud, emphasized the importance of establishing boundaries, of ensuring that the sanctity of this encounter was preserved. The people, overcome with fear and wonder, were to be kept at a safe distance, for to approach the mountain in their current state would be to court disaster. Even the priests, those chosen to minister before the Lord, were to consecrate themselves meticulously, lest they too face the consequences of approaching the divine presence without the proper reverence and preparation. The message was clear. Holiness demanded respect, and any attempt to approach God's glory casually, without acknowledging His power and majesty, would be met with swift and decisive judgment. Moses, his voice carrying the weight of divine authority, relayed God's instructions to the people. He established a perimeter around the mountain, a visible demarcation between the sacred and the profane. This was not a place for casual curiosity or presumptuous approach. It was a holy sanctuary, a place where the very air vibrated with the presence of the Almighty. The scene was set, the stage prepared for a covenant ceremony unlike any other. Moses, having descended from his encounter with God on the summit of Mount Sinai, stood before the assembled Israelites, his face reflecting the gravity of the moment. In his hands, he held the Book of the Covenant, a tangible embodiment of the divine laws and decrees that would govern their lives as a people chosen by God. With a clear and steady voice, Moses read aloud the words inscribed upon the sacred scrolls. The Israelites listened with rapt attention, their hearts pounding in their chests, their minds struggling to grasp the full weight of the commitment they were about to undertake. The covenant, they understood, was not a one-sided agreement, a mere list of rules imposed upon them by a distant deity. It was a sacred bond, a reciprocal relationship built on trust, obedience, and the promise of blessings. To seal this sacred pact, a sacrifice was required, a tangible representation of the solemn vows being exchanged. Animals were brought forth, their blood collected in bowls, a potent symbol of life offered in dedication to the divine. Moses, his hands stained crimson, sprinkled the blood upon the altar, and then, in a gesture rich with symbolism, he sprinkled the blood upon the people themselves. "This is the blood of the covenant," he proclaimed, his voice echoing across the silent assembly, "that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words." The blood, a visceral reminder of the sanctity of the oath they were taking, served as a tangible link between the Israelites and their God. It was a covenant forged not in ink but in lifeblood, a testament to the enduring bond between the divine and the human. A hush fell over the assembled Israelites. The air, thick with anticipation, crackled with an unseen energy. The dramatic prelude, the fire, the smoke, the thunderous trumpet blasts had instilled a primal fear, a sense of awe in the face of the divine. Then, from the heart of that swirling cloud, a voice boomed forth, a voice that seemed to shake the very foundations of the mountain itself. It was a voice unlike any they had ever heard, a voice that commanded attention, a voice that spoke with the authority of the cosmos itself. Moses, their leader, their intermediary, stood closer to the cloud than any of them dared. He had ascended into that realm of fire and cloud, had spoken with God as one speaks to a friend, and yet, even he trembled before the power of the divine voice. The Israelites, their senses overwhelmed, strained to hear the words that echoed from the summit. Their hearts pounded in their chests, their breath caught in their throats, as they awaited the pronouncements that would shape their destiny. This was no ordinary communication, no casual conversation between mortals and the divine. This was a declaration, a revelation of cosmic significance. The voice, resonant with power and authority, etched itself upon their very souls. These were not suggestions, not guidelines open to interpretation, but commandments, divine decrees intended to govern their lives, to shape their society, to define their relationship with the God who had delivered them from slavery and now stood poised to lead them into a new era. Section 2. The 10 Words. A Foundation for Life. The voice from the mountain reverberated across the desolate landscape, each word a thunderbolt striking the hearts of the Israelites. What they heard were not intricate legal pronouncements, not convoluted philosophical treatises, but 10 fundamental principles, 10 concise commandments that formed the bedrock of a moral and ethical code designed to guide their lives. These 10 words, as they came to be known, were simple yet profound, accessible to all, yet eternally challenging in their implications. The first commandment, a resounding declaration of monotheism, established the very foundation of their relationship with the divine. I am the Lord your God. You shall have no other gods before me. This unequivocal statement, a radical departure from the polytheistic beliefs of their neighbors, formed the cornerstone of their faith. It declared the singularity, the supremacy of the God who had chosen them, liberated them, and now offered them a path to holiness. The commandments that followed addressed the most fundamental aspects of human existence. They spoke of respect for the divine, for parents, for life itself. They condemned idolatry, murder, adultery, theft, false witness, and covetousness. These were not arbitrary rules, but timeless principles designed to foster a just and compassionate society, a community where individuals were valued, relationships were honored, and the sanctity of life was paramount. The 10 Commandments, etched in stone and seared into the very fabric of their being, became the ethical compass guiding the Israelites' journey. They were a constant reminder of their covenant with God, a framework for building a society that reflected the divine attributes of justice, mercy, and righteousness. These 10 words, though spoken millennia ago, continue to resonate with profound moral authority, challenging individuals and nations alike to strive for a higher standard of ethical conduct, a life lived in harmony with the divine will. Section 3. No other gods before me, the essence of monotheism. The first commandment, you shall have no other gods before me, stands as a beacon, a revolutionary statement that shattered the prevailing religious paradigms of the ancient world. In an era dominated by polytheism where gods and goddesses were perceived as capricious beings vying for power and allegiance, the Israelites were called to embrace a radically different concept, the existence of one God, the sole creator and sustainer of all that is. This declaration of monotheism was not merely a theological abstraction, it had profound implications for every aspect of their lives. It meant rejecting the worship of idols, those tangible representations of false gods that promised security, prosperity, and fertility. It meant refusing to bow down to the idols of power, wealth, and pleasure that so often captivated the human heart. It meant placing their trust, their allegiance, their very lives in the hands of the one true God who had revealed himself as a God of justice, mercy, and compassion. This first commandment challenged the Israelites to redefine their understanding of power, to recognize that true authority resided not in capricious deities or earthly rulers, but in the one God who held the universe in the palm of his hand. It called them to live lives characterized by faith, not fear, to find their security not in material possessions or military might, but in the unwavering faithfulness of the God who had made a covenant with them. The prohibition against having other gods was not a jealous demand for exclusive attention, it was a profound act of love, a desire to protect his chosen people from the spiritual and moral degradation that inevitably accompanied the worship of false gods. It was an invitation to experience the freedom, the joy, the transformative power of knowing and serving the one true God. Section 4. The Sabbath. A sacred rhythm of rest and remembrance. In the midst of the 10 Commandments, amidst pronouncements concerning the sacredness of life, the importance of honesty, and the prohibition against covetousness, we find a commandment that seems, at first glance, curiously out of place. Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. This commandment, nestled among those addressing seemingly more weighty matters, speaks to the profound importance of rest, of establishing a rhythm of life that transcends the relentless demands of work and productivity. The Israelites, recently freed from the shackles of slavery, a life characterized by relentless toil and the denial of basic freedoms, were now commanded to set aside one day a week to refrain from work, to dedicate that time to rest, reflection, and the remembrance of God's goodness. This concept of a Sabbath, a day consecrated to the divine, was revolutionary in a world that often glorified ceaseless labor and the pursuit of material gain. The Sabbath was not merely a day of inactivity, it was a time for the Israelites to nurture their spiritual lives, to gather with family and community, to recount the stories of God's deliverance, and to renew their commitment to the covenant. It was a day to acknowledge that their lives were not solely defined by their labor, but by their relationship with God and with one another. The commandment to remember the Sabbath was also a profound act of empathy, a recognition that even animals and servants, those often denied basic rights and dignity, were deserving of rest and respite. It was a reminder that true freedom encompassed not only physical liberation, but also the freedom from relentless toil, the freedom to nurture one's spiritual life, and the freedom to live in right relationship with God, with others, and with oneself. Section 5. Honoring parents, respecting life, embracing integrity. The Ten Commandments, though concise in their formulation, encompass a vast spectrum of human experience. They address not only our relationship with God, but also our responsibilities towards those closest to us and towards the broader community. 3 commandments in particular, honoring parents, prohibiting murder and condemning adultery, theft and false witness, highlight the importance of respect, integrity, and the sanctity of life itself. Honor your father and your mother is a commandment that transcends cultural boundaries and speaks to the fundamental importance of filial piety. In a society where the elderly were often revered for their wisdom and experience, this commandment served as a reminder to treat one's parents with respect, to care for them in their old age, and to honor the debt of gratitude owed to those who had given them life and nurtured them in their youth. The prohibition against murder stands as a stark reminder of the sanctity of human life. It is a commandment that speaks to the inherent value and dignity of every individual, regardless of social status, ethnicity, or personal beliefs. This commandment, rooted in the belief that all human beings are created in the image of God, formed the cornerstone of a just and compassionate society, a society where violence was condemned and the taking of innocent life was anathema. The commandments against adultery, theft, and false witness address the importance of integrity in our relationships with others. Adultery, a betrayal of trust that strikes at the heart of marriage and family, was condemned as a violation of the sacred covenant between husband and wife. Theft, whether of material possessions or intellectual property, was forbidden as a violation of one's neighbor's right to security and well-being. False witness, a deliberate attempt to harm another through lies and deception, was prohibited as a corrosive force that undermines justice, destroys trust, and fractures communities. Section 6. Echoes of Sinai, a legacy of law and covenant. The echoes of that momentous day at Sinai, when the 10 Commandments were etched in stone and seared into the hearts of the Israelites, continue to reverberate through history. These 10 words, though spoken millennia ago in the context of a specific covenant between God and a fledgling nation, have transcended their original historical context and have become a cornerstone of Western law, morality, and ethics. The 10 Commandments, with their emphasis on monotheism, the sanctity of life, the importance of honesty and integrity, and the need for social responsibility, have profoundly influenced the development of legal codes and moral frameworks across cultures and religions. They have served as a source of inspiration for social reformers, a rallying cry for justice, and a reminder of the transcendent principles that should guide human conduct. The legacy of Sinai is not merely a collection of ancient laws, it is a testament to the enduring power of covenant, the transformative potential of encountering the divine, and the ongoing human struggle to create a just and compassionate world. The 10 Commandments, though often challenged and sometimes disregarded, continue to stand as a beacon, a reminder of our shared humanity, our obligation to care for one another, and our responsibility to live in right relationship with God and with all creation. Section 1. Laws of Justice and Compassion, a Framework for Society. As Moses descended from his encounter with God on Mount Sinai, his arms laden not only with the 10 Commandments but also with a more extensive collection of laws and precepts, the Israelites stood poised on the brink of a new era. They were no longer a scattered horde of escaped slaves, but a people being forged into a nation, a people bound by a covenant and guided by a divinely ordained legal code. These laws, found in Exodus chapters 21 to 23, covered a wide range of social interactions, addressing issues of justice, compassion, and ethical conduct within the community. The laws pertaining to Hebrew servants, for instance, reflected a deep concern for fairness and the dignity of all members of society. While servitude was permitted, it was not to be a life sentence. Hebrew slaves were to be released after 6 years of service, and their masters were obligated to provide for their well-being even after their period of servitude had ended. This emphasis on compassion, on recognizing the inherent worth of every individual, stood in stark contrast to the brutal practices of surrounding nations, where slavery was often a life sentence marked by cruelty and exploitation. The laws also addressed issues of personal injury, seeking to ensure that justice was served while also tempering punishment with mercy. The principle of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, though seemingly harsh by modern standards, was actually intended to limit retaliation, to prevent excessive punishment that could lead to cycles of violence and vengeance. The emphasis was on restoring balance, on ensuring that the punishment fit the crime, and on preventing the escalation of conflict within the community. These laws, covering matters as diverse as property rights, the protection of widows and orphans, and the treatment of foreigners, provided a comprehensive framework for building a just and compassionate society. They reflected a deep concern for the well-being of all members of the community, a commitment to fairness, and a recognition that true holiness was not merely a matter of ritual purity, but of living in right relationship with God and with one another. In the heart of the legal code delivered through Moses, we find a recurring theme, a profound concern for the most vulnerable members of society, widows, orphans, and foreigners. These individuals, often marginalized and exploited in the ancient world, were afforded special protection under the Mosaic Law, a testament to the compassionate heart of the God who had delivered the Israelites from slavery and sought to create a just and merciful society. Widows, having lost their husbands and protectors, were particularly susceptible to poverty and abuse. The law mandated that they be treated with compassion and respect, that they not be taken advantage of in legal matters, and that they be provided for materially through the gleaning laws, which allowed them to gather leftover grain from the fields after the harvest. Orphans, similarly vulnerable, were to be cared for by the community, ensuring that they were not left destitute or subjected to exploitation. Perhaps most surprising, given the xenophobia common in the ancient world, was the mandate to treat foreigners with kindness and respect. Do not mistreat or oppress a foreigner, for you were foreigners in Egypt, the law declared, reminding the Israelites of their own experience of vulnerability and hardship. They were to remember their past suffering, their time as strangers in a foreign land, and to extend compassion and hospitality to those who were now strangers among them. This concern for the vulnerable, this emphasis on social justice, and the equitable treatment of all members of society, stands as a testament to the radical nature of the Mosaic Law. It was a legal code that sought to create a society where the weak were protected, the marginalized were given a voice, and the principles of compassion and justice prevailed. Embedded within the Mosaic Law, amidst commandments addressing personal conduct, social responsibility, and ritual observance, we find a remarkable concept: the Sabbath year, a year of rest for the land and a time of provision for the poor. Every seventh year, the Israelites were commanded to let their fields lie fallow, to refrain from planting and harvesting crops, allowing the land to rejuvenate and replenish its fertility. This practice, seemingly impractical in an agrarian society dependent on the land for sustenance, reflected a profound understanding of ecological balance and a deep compassion for the poor and marginalized. The Sabbath year served as a tangible reminder that the land was not theirs to exploit without consequence, but a gift from God to be cared for and respected. During this year of rest, the land was not to be left barren and unproductive. The poor, the landless, and even the wild animals were invited to partake of its bounty. Whatever grew naturally during the Sabbath year was considered a gift from God, freely available to all. This provision for the poor, this recognition that even the land itself was to be a source of blessing for the most vulnerable members of society, speaks volumes about the compassionate heart of the law. The Sabbath year served as a powerful symbol of God's provision and a reminder of the Israelites' own dependence on Him. It was a time to acknowledge that true wealth was not measured solely in material possessions, but in the well-being of the entire community, and that even the land itself could be a source of blessing and provision for all. Woven into the fabric of the Mosaic Law were 3 annual festivals, each marking a significant event in the Israelites' history and serving as a joyous celebration of God's faithfulness. These festivals, Passover, Pentecost, also known as the Festival of Weeks, and Tabernacles, or booths, were not merely religious holidays, they were pilgrimage festivals, times when the Israelites were commanded to journey to the central sanctuary, to gather as a community before the Lord, and to renew their covenant relationship with Him. Passover, commemorating their miraculous deliverance from slavery in Egypt, was a time for families to gather, to recount the story of the Exodus, and to partake of a symbolic meal that included unleavened bread, bitter herbs, and a roasted lamb. Pentecost, celebrated 50 days after Passover, marked the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai, and was a time to offer the first fruits of the harvest to God as a gesture of gratitude for His provision. Tabernacles, a week-long festival observed in the fall, celebrated the Israelites' 40 years of wandering in the wilderness and served as a reminder of God's protection and provision during those challenging years. During Tabernacles, families constructed temporary shelters or booths from branches and leaves, symbolizing the fragile dwellings they had inhabited during their wilderness journey. These 3 pilgrimage festivals played a vital role in fostering a sense of national unity and religious identity among the Israelites. They provided opportunities for families and communities from all parts of the land to come together, to worship God collectively, to renew their covenant vows, and to celebrate His faithfulness through feasting, singing, dancing, and the sharing of stories. As the Israelites prepared to leave the familiar surroundings of Mount Sinai and venture deeper into the unknown territories that lay between them and the Promised Land, God offered them a reassuring promise of guidance and protection. He would send an angel, a divine messenger, to go before them, to clear the path, to lead them to their destination, and to ensure their safety along the way. This promise, however, came with a caveat, a reminder of the importance of obedience and respect for the divine messenger. Pay attention to him and listen to what he says. God instructed Moses, "Do not rebel against him. He will not forgive your rebellion since my name is in him." This angel, though a messenger, was not to be trifled with. He carried with him the authority of God, and any act of disobedience towards him would be considered an act of rebellion against God Himself. The presence of the angel served as a tangible reminder of God's faithfulness to His promises. He had pledged to bring them to the land flowing with milk and honey, a land He had promised to their forefathers, and He would remain with them, guiding and protecting them every step of the way. However, this divine assistance was not unconditional. It was contingent upon their obedience, their willingness to follow where the angel led, and their commitment to upholding the covenant they had made with God at Mount Sinai. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, with dangers both seen and unseen, with temptations to stray from the path and to forget the covenant they had made. But with the angel of the Lord going before them, clearing the way, offering guidance and protection, they could face the unknown with courage and hope, knowing that they were not alone in their journey. As the Israelites prepared to break camp and journey onward, the majestic peak of Mount Sinai receding behind them, a sense of both anticipation and trepidation filled their hearts. They carried with them the law, the covenant, the promise of a land flowing with milk and honey, But they also carried the weight of responsibility, the knowledge that their future depended on their faithfulness to the God who had chosen them and who now called them to a life of obedience and holiness. The journey ahead would be long and arduous, filled with challenges that would test their faith, their resolve, and their commitment to the covenant. They would face hunger, thirst, and exhaustion. They would encounter hostile tribes and navigate treacherous terrain. They would be tempted to despair, to grumble against Moses, and to long for the relative security of their former lives in Egypt. Yet amidst these challenges, they were also sustained by hope, by the promise of a future filled with blessings. They had witnessed the power of God in the Exodus, in the parting of the Red Sea, in the provision of manna and water in the wilderness. They had heard his voice at Mount Sinai, had received his law, and had entered into a covenant relationship with him. They were a people on a mission, a people chosen by God to be a light to the nations, to demonstrate the transformative power of living in covenant with the Almighty. The journey ahead would not be easy, but they would face it with courage and determination, knowing that they were not alone, that the God who had delivered them from slavery would continue to guide and protect them, leading them, step by step, toward the fulfillment of his promises. The air crackled with anticipation as Moses, his face bearing the weight of his encounter with the divine, descended Mount Sinai and approached the assembled Israelites. He carried with him 2 stone tablets, inscribed with the very words of God, the 10 commandments that would form the bedrock of their new society. But before those laws could be etched into the heart of the nation, a covenant had to be sealed. A bond forged not in ink, but in blood. A testament to the gravity of the commitment they were about to undertake. Moses, his voice strong and resonant, recounted the words, the laws, the decrees he had received from the Lord. The Israelites, humbled by the awesome display of divine power they had witnessed, listened with rapt attention, their hearts pounding in their chests. They understood that this was no ordinary agreement, no mere contract between rulers and subjects, but a sacred pact, a binding oath that would shape their destiny as a people chosen by God. To seal this covenant, a sacrifice was required, a tangible representation of the lifeblood that would bind them to their God. Animals, carefully chosen and prepared according to the divine instructions, were brought forth. Their blood, a potent symbol of life offered in dedication, was collected in bowls, the air thick with the metallic scent of sacrifice. Moses, his hands stained crimson, sprinkled the blood upon the altar, a gesture rich with ancient meaning. The covenant sealed, the air thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of prayers, a select group led by Moses ascended the slopes of Mount Sinai. Aaron, his brother and chosen high priest, accompanied him, along with Nadab and Abihu, Aaron's sons, and 70 elders of Israel, men revered for their wisdom and experience. They climbed carefully, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation, for they were about to be granted a privilege unheard of in human experience, a glimpse of the divine. As they approached the summit, the clouds parted, revealing a sight that would forever be etched into their memories. There, amidst a brilliance that defied description, they saw something resembling a pavement made of lapis lazuli, a stone prized for its intense blue color, like the sky on the clearest of days, and standing on that pavement, their forms not fully defined, were figures, radiating an otherworldly light. They were in the presence of God, not as a voice from the whirlwind, not as fire consuming the mountain, but as something more, something that transcended their limited human understanding. The elders, overcome with the sheer magnitude of what they were witnessing, fell to their knees, their faces pressed against the rocky ground. Fear, primal and instinctive, threatened to overwhelm them, yet it was a fear mixed with a profound sense of awe, a realization that they were in the presence of something holy, something infinitely greater than themselves. And through it all, they felt a strange sense of peace, a comforting assurance that they were accepted, that they were in the presence of a God who, though mighty and powerful, was also merciful and compassionate. The elders, their hearts still pounding from their encounter with the divine, remained on the slopes of Mount Sinai, marveling at the experience that had forever altered their understanding of God and their place in the cosmos. But for Moses, the journey was far from over. He was being called higher, drawn deeper into the mystery that shrouded the summit. Leaving Aaron and the elders behind, he ascended alone, his heart filled with a strange mix of anticipation and trepidation. As he climbed, the air grew heavy, the light taking on a strange ethereal quality. The path, already treacherous, disappeared into a swirling cloud, a dense mist that seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy. Moses pressed onward, his faith his only guide, his trust in God the only anchor in a world that had suddenly become unfamiliar, disorienting. He was entering the very heart of the divine presence, a realm where the boundaries between the physical and the spiritual seemed to dissolve, where human senses were no longer reliable guides. He could feel the presence of God all around him, not as a distinct entity, but as a pervasive energy, a force that both terrified and exhilarated him. The air crackled with an unseen power, a power that seemed to emanate from the very rocks beneath his feet, from the swirling mist that enveloped him, from the depths of his own being. He was being unmade and remade, stripped bare of all pretense, all human striving, and clothed in the raw, unfiltered power of the divine. Down in the camp, life went on, yet the Israelites lived with a heightened awareness of the divine drama unfolding above them. The mountain, normally a silent sentinel against the vast desert sky, was now a spectacle of awe-inspiring power, cloaked in a swirling cloud that seemed to pulsate with an unseen energy. Lightning flashed across its peak, illuminating the cloud with an eerie glow, while the rumble of thunder echoed across the barren landscape, a constant reminder of God's presence. 40 days, 40 nights. The time stretched out, a seemingly endless period of waiting and uncertainty. Moses, their leader, their intermediary with God, remained on the mountain, enveloped in the cloud of glory, his fate unknown. They had received the 10 Commandments, had participated in the covenant ceremony, had even been granted a glimpse of the divine presence. But now, a palpable silence had descended, a silence pregnant with expectation, a silence that seemed to amplify the very beating of their hearts. The elders, their beards now whiter, their faces etched with the weight of responsibility, did their best to maintain order, to reassure the people, to keep alive the flame of hope. They recounted the stories of God's faithfulness, reminding the Israelites of his deliverance from Egypt, his provision in the wilderness. They led them in prayers, their voices rising in unison, beseeching God's mercy, his guidance, his continued presence. Life in the shadow of Mount Sinai had taken on a surreal quality. The Israelites went about their daily tasks, tending their flocks, preparing meals, mending tents, yet every aspect of their lives was now infused with a heightened awareness of the divine. The mountain loomed large, a constant reminder of their encounter with the Almighty, a tangible symbol of the covenant they had made, the law they had received, the promises they clung to. The waiting was the hardest part. 40 days might have seemed like an eternity, but it was also a time for introspection, for the words of God to take root in their hearts, for the meaning of the covenant to sink deep into their souls. They had been slaves in Egypt, had known the bitterness of oppression, the sting of the taskmaster's whip. Now, they were being forged into something new, a people set apart, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. But freedom, they were discovering, was not merely the absence of chains, it was a responsibility, a challenge to live up to the ideals embodied in the law they had received. It was a call to create a just and compassionate society, a community where the weak were protected, where the orphan and the widow found refuge, where the stranger was welcomed with open arms. The waiting continued. The cloud still shrouded the mountain, a visible manifestation of the mystery, the majesty, the terrifying and exhilarating presence of the God who had chosen them, delivered them, and now called them to be his people. They waited, not in idleness, but in hopeful anticipation, their hearts turned towards the mountain, their spirits yearning for the day when Moses would descend, carrying with him the blueprint for a new kind of life, a life lived in covenant with the Almighty. The cloud still swirled atop Mount Sinai, a visible reminder of the divine presence that both captivated and terrified the Israelites. Yet, even as Moses remained shrouded in that enigmatic mist, receiving further instructions from the Lord, a new task, a monumental undertaking, was being revealed to the people: the construction of a tabernacle, a portable sanctuary that would serve as a dwelling place for God amidst their camp. This was not to be a structure of mere human design, a testament to their architectural prowess. The Lord, through Moses, provided detailed instructions for every aspect of the tabernacle, from the dimensions of its walls and the arrangement of its curtains, to the materials to be used and the symbolic significance of each element. This was to be a dwelling place fit for a holy God, a sanctuary that reflected His glory, His majesty, and His abiding presence among His chosen people. The task was daunting, requiring not only raw materials but also a level of craftsmanship that tested the limits of their abilities. Gold, silver, and bronze were to be donated, gifts offered willingly from the bounty the Lord had provided. Skilled artisans, men and women gifted with talents honed during their years of servitude in Egypt, were called upon to put their skills to a new purpose, to create not for earthly rulers but for the King of Kings. At the very heart of the tabernacle, within the innermost chamber known as the Holy of Holies, rested the Ark of the Covenant, a chest crafted from acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold. This was no ordinary container, it was a sacred repository, a vessel designed to hold the very presence of God. Within its depths, carefully placed beneath a solid gold lid known as the mercy seat, lay the 2 stone tablets inscribed with the 10 Commandments, the words that defined their covenant relationship with the Almighty. The Ark was more than just a container for sacred objects. It was a symbolic throne for the invisible God. The mercy seat, positioned atop the Ark, represented the place where God's presence would dwell, where His justice and mercy would meet. 2 golden cherubim, their wings outstretched as if in protection, adorned the ends of the mercy seat, their faces turned towards each other, gazing down upon the sacred space below. The Ark, carried on poles by designated priests, went before the Israelites as they journeyed towards the Promised Land. It was a visible reminder of God's presence among them, a symbol of His protection, His guidance, and His unwavering faithfulness to the covenant He had made with them. To approach the Ark without proper reverence, without the required rituals of purification, was to court death, for it was the very embodiment of God's holiness, His power, and His unapproachable glory. Section 3. The Table and the Lampstand, Nourishment and Illumination. Beyond the veil that shielded the Holy of Holies, within the sacred space known as the Holy Place, stood 2 more significant furnishings of the tabernacle: the table of showbread and the golden lampstand. These objects, though seemingly mundane in purpose, carried profound symbolic significance, representing God's provision, His guidance, and His desire to dwell among His people. The table, crafted from acacia wood and overlaid with pure gold, stood on 4 legs, and was adorned with decorative crowns and a border. Upon it 12 loaves of unleavened bread, representing the 12 tribes of Israel, were placed fresh each Sabbath, a symbol of God's ongoing provision for His people. This showbread, or bread of the presence, served as a constant reminder that they were dependent on Him for sustenance, both physical and spiritual. Opposite the table, on the south side of the holy place, stood the golden lampstand, a masterpiece of craftsmanship hammered from a single talent of pure gold. Its central shaft rose gracefully, supporting 6 branches that extended outward, each branch adorned with intricately crafted cups shaped like almond flowers, buds, and blossoms. 7 lamps, fueled by pure olive oil, rested upon the lampstand, their flames burning perpetually, casting a warm glow within the holy place, and symbolizing God's presence, His guidance, and His illuminating truth. The altar of burnt offering, a place of sacrifice and atonement. Positioned at the entrance to the tabernacle within the courtyard that surrounded the sacred tent, stood the altar of burnt offering, a stark and imposing structure crafted from acacia wood and overlaid with bronze. It was here, in the open air beneath the vast expanse of the desert sky, that the Israelites brought their sacrifices, offerings designed to atone for their sins, to demonstrate their gratitude for God's blessings, and to seek His favor and guidance. The altar, hollow within and square in shape, had 4 prominent horns, one at each corner, symbolizing strength and power. It was here that the blood of the sacrifices, a potent symbol of life offered in atonement for sin, was sprinkled, signifying the purification and reconciliation that God desired for his people. The sacrifices offered on the altar varied depending on the occasion and the means of the worshiper, but the underlying principle remained the same, a tangible expression of their need for God's mercy and their desire to live in right relationship with Him. The smoke from the burnt offerings, rising skyward, carried with it the prayers and petitions of the Israelites, a fragrant aroma ascending to the heavens, a tangible manifestation of their devotion and their dependence on God's grace. The altar, a place of both sacrifice and sanctification, stood as a constant reminder of the cost of sin, the need for atonement, and the boundless mercy of a God who desired not the death of sinners, but their repentance and restoration. The events at Mount Sinai, recounted in Exodus chapters 19 to 27, resonate with a power that transcends time and place. They stand as a pivotal moment in the history of the Israelite people, marking their transformation from a fleeing horde of escaped slaves into a nation bound by covenant to a God who had chosen them, liberated them, and now sought to shape them into a people who reflected His holiness and righteousness. The echoes of that momentous encounter with the divine, when the very mountain trembled beneath the weight of God's presence, when the air crackled with thunder and lightning, and when the 10 Commandments were etched in stone, continue to reverberate through the corridors of history, shaping religious beliefs, legal codes, and ethical frameworks across cultures and civilizations. The giving of the law at Sinai was not merely a historical event. It was a transformative experience that forever altered the Israelites' understanding of themselves, their relationship with God, and their place in the world. It was a defining moment that marked the birth of a nation, the establishment of a covenant relationship, and the revelation of a divine blueprint for living a life of purpose, meaning, and holiness. The legacy of Sinai is multifaceted, encompassing not only a legal code but also a profound understanding of covenant and the transformative power of encountering the divine. The 10 Commandments, with their emphasis on monotheism, the sanctity of life, the importance of honesty and integrity, and the need for social justice, have provided a moral compass for countless individuals and communities throughout history. The concept of covenant, so central to the Sinai narrative, speaks to the reciprocal nature of the relationship between God and humanity. It is a relationship built not on fear or coercion, but on love, trust, and mutual commitment. God promises to bless, protect, and guide His people, while they, in turn, are called to love Him, obey His commands, and live lives that reflect His holiness and righteousness. The events at Sinai also highlight the transformative power of encountering the divine. The Israelites, having witnessed God's awesome power in the Exodus, and having heard His voice at the mountain, were forever changed. They were no longer the same people who had toiled under the yoke of slavery in Egypt. They had been touched by the divine, and their lives would never be the same. The Exodus narrative, with its themes of liberation, covenant, and the establishment of a just and compassionate society, continues to resonate with people across cultures and faiths. It speaks to the universal longing for freedom, for dignity, for a world where oppression is overcome, and where all people are treated with respect and equality. The story of the Israelites' journey from slavery to freedom has inspired countless movements for social justice. From the abolition of slavery to the civil rights movement, it serves as a reminder that God is a God of liberation, a God who hears the cries of the oppressed, and who sides with the marginalized and the downtrodden. The Exodus narrative also reminds us that the journey towards a more just and compassionate world is often long and arduous, filled with challenges and setbacks. The Israelites, despite witnessing God's miraculous power, still struggled with doubt, fear, and disobedience. Their journey was marked by both triumphs and failures, by moments of great faith and times of profound despair. Yet, through it all, God remained faithful to His promises, guiding them, providing for them, and ultimately leading them to the Promised Land. The Exodus narrative, in its honesty about the human condition and its unwavering affirmation of God's faithfulness, offers a message of hope, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, even when the path ahead seems uncertain, God is with us, calling us towards a future filled with possibility, purpose, and the promise of a better world.